So, I just watched Solar Opposites Season 4. The season was good. Not great, not horrible, but good. And I'm starting to see something that could be a problem later on, but for now, I'm enjoying the goofy ride that is Solar Opposites. So, let's get the elephant out of the room. Corvo sounds different. I can't believe they just randomly decided to shoot him in the neck and fix it with the voice changing ray, and now he just sounds different. What a goofy show this is, and that's the only reason they did it too? What the heck? This show is so goofy. I enjoyed the Solar Opposites family portion of the season. I had a couple of laughs, but nothing felt crazy, which to be fair was by design for at least the first 2 or 3 episodes. At the end of season 3, in order for the pupa to return to normal, they had to make the tough decision of having a normal life and getting rid of all things sci-fi for the sake of the pupa not destroying everything or something? So the first episode was about us, the audience, seeing their now mundane lives, working at a rate company, and going to school. I feel like this was the only episode this season that took place at school. Corvo and Terry want to spruce up their boring lives in the most non-sci-fi way, and what did that entail, you may ask? Getting a ping-pong table and playing a game of ping-pong. That's what they call it in the show, don't try to correct me and say ping-pong. Their boss was against it though. He just can't justify the expense to the board who he has a meeting with today. No matter what Terry or Corvo do, they can't do it. Especially not in the boiler room because that's dangerous. Well, once the boss got home, he started remembering and feeling nostalgia for all the good things that came with the game of ping pong. So he surprised him with the table the next day in the boiler room. They played a game and he died. I don't know what we expected, but yeah, this is where the sci-fi stuff came into play. They revived him to do the meeting. He was upset or crazed because he saw what was on the other side and really wanted to go back, so he died again. And they make Terry the new boss and they live happily ever after until the next episode. What I forgot to mention is that in episode 1, Corvo had a whole scheme planned out for when he took over the company. So now that Terry's in charge, he's a little jealous boy, you know what I'm saying? Terry is very Terry about his new status, so he's very lackadaisical and witty to the point where he's basically ignoring Corvo and talking to every other employee a lot more. As the great Austin McBroom once said, never work in the same company with the people you love. I'm sure you said that at some point. Terry has to do this trip. He's planned to do this big meeting with a big lad so he can invest in the company, but Corvo doesn't trust him. Corvo thinks he'll mess it up, and we know how a story like this will go, but let's continue. Corvo ends up locking Terry in a hotel, a la insert movie reference here, and everyone who tries to come and help him also gets insert movie referenced. Corvo goes to the meeting, takes the lad out on a golf trip, and we can see the lad starts to wager things with Corvo, and Corvo keeps winning. To the point where they start doing bit bets, but Terry comes in, telling him his plan was to have an easy meeting where they could play games and he could win easily because he's a habitual gambler. Yep, it turns out Terry's a good boss. Who would have seen that coming? Also, as a side note, Yumulak and Jesse are searching for these 2 golden apples that their version of Daft Punk have put around the city, but doing so eventually made them run into some racists? Alienists? They also ended up running into this rotten peach or something, and it turned out that their version of Daft Punk were the racists? It's weird. And I'm only mentioning this because this is how we get back to the wall. Yumulak turns their version of Daft Punk very small and ends up putting them inside the wall. So just know we'll talk about the wall later. Immediately after the first episodes, they forgo all of the office and school stuff. They no longer care if the pupa goes out of control, and to be fair, neither does the pupa. We see him go on multiple adventures by himself and also did some time traveling with Yumulak and Jesse in an episode. And in another episode, he went deep into the ship to save a lot of people that got stuck deep inside with this weird sci-fi bug climbing around. And if that doesn't sound like sci-fi, I don't know what does. Solar Opposites is in a very weird place where not much really goes on with the family by design. Not much care really goes into the stories or how they pan themselves out. By the time we're in episode 2, we've already dropped all the don't do any sci-fi stuff and everybody's already doing sci-fi stuff again. And I'd personally say that the adventures were less memorable than they were in season 3 during those goofy times, but that's not saying a lot really. And then we get to episode 10. Episode 10 is a finale that I do think will get resolved or dropped in the first 2 episodes of the next season like seasons 3 did and this one. They have been on Earth for so long that their bodies start to turn human to blend in more. At first it was just Terry, then Jesse turned, then Yumulak, and finally Corvo at the end. They would proceed to spend the next few months living out their human fantasies, and it would become so shit for every last one of them, except for Corvo, who became this hunk of a guy and does not want to go back to being a loser alien, but eventually they drag him along and they go out and find a new place for them to inhabit so they can turn back to normal. They end up finding this alien planet and crash down on a house to stay there for the time being, and are happy at least that they're human and won't be seen as outcasts. But they're on an alien planet and they hate humans. Corvo proceeds to say the exact same thing what he does in the intro of all of these episodes, just about this new planet at the end of the season. Something in me is guaranteeing that this will end up getting resolved or dropped as soon as season 5 episodes start coming out, but it's entirely possible that they're actually just here now. Earth feels like an integral part to the story though, so I doubt that they're just gonna be gone for that long. I mentioned this earlier, but the solar opposite stuff has taken so much of a back foot to the actual stories at play here. The stories of these poor people whose lives were changed so dramatically, all because they ran into the solar opposites people. I'm obviously talking about The Wall and Silvercops. The Wall being this anthill-like thing that Yumulak has, where everybody who gets on his nerves or talks to him the wrong way, he turns them small and puts them in here, and they just suffer and try to survive on their own. The Silvercup story being about Glenn, who was talking crap about Corvo and Terry's bullet, so they decided, let's just shoot this guy off into space, and this is how he's surviving on his own. The Wall has went through a lot of changes over the season, and this one is no different to the rest really. Every time it seems like they get rid of one evil tyrant, another one pops up to lead the people into a new way of life, and this one is about the church lady. I can't really recall her name, but she has turned Jesse into this benevolent god, so there is an entire side of The Wall that prays and follows the way of Jesse, and there is the other side who doesn't believe. If you watch any media at all that follows religious like cults, whether it's anime or your favorite vampire flick, you're well aware of how these types of stories are portrayed, and this one is even worse because they stole Cherry's child and is having everyone praise it like it's a child that Jesse gave life to. It's kind of weird and creepy how well this works, considering they were all humans in the real world at one point and should be able to find all the hypocrisies and lies that are being spread, but I guess that's just how much the Wall has broken them. But luckily there's a spy in the ranks of the church, and he's giving details to the other side about something big that's happening. And a big argument on the non-believer side is that Cherry obviously wants to save her kid before they can do anything to the church mother, but the rest of the crew does not care about her kid, and it can just be collateral damage. They don't care, the kid can die. But Cherry and the others in the crew went to great lengths to lie to each other and get what they want, but only Cherry and the mole survived. They eventually escaped with a handful of others to the outside of the Wall, and they're going to try and survive out there because it can't be much worse out there than all of the killing and stuff that's happening in the Wall, right? As for the Wall, well, one of the believers finds the mother trying to escape, and the mother starts to go off on them, telling them that they're really dumb for believing anything that she's been saying. She hates Jesse and Yumulak for putting her in this situation. One where she praised them, but just as she was saying that, Jesse accidentally steps on her and kills her. And she put the believer back in, turns the temp up, and basically saves the Wall from freezing to death. So now this believer no longer believes in a fake religion. The way of Jesse is now very real to her, and she was saved by the Holy One. I don't remember how much I mentioned the Silvercops story within the last video, but I'm so surprised that it's still continuing. That's one thing I really think I can praise this show about, is most adult animated shows, they use this as a throwaway gag and they probably would never return to it. But they turned this throwaway gag into some sort of a space drama, or I guess survival drama in case of The Wall. It's something you don't see a lot of stuff do, and I can't do anything but praise them for it, genuinely. This portion of the Silvercops series takes place where Glenn was left. He had ran away from the Silvercops because they were going to blame him for some stuff that he didn't do, if I remember correctly, and now he's trying to survive on his own in a jungle on a planet that's filled with the most dangerous creatures imaginable, and it was going very poor for him. It was going so poorly, in fact, that the character Vin Diesel plays in the Fast series had to give him a pep talk and inspire him to go out on some sort of blaze of glory, but at the end of it, instead of dying, someone found him and took him in. Glenn was basically took into this group. It's a group of misfits who all bond over the hatred of Silvercops, each of them with an individual story on how the Silvercops had ruined their lives. Glenn now has to hide the fact that he used to be one of them, and things are great. Well, until they aren't. Months went by and the gang starts to notice some currency. I think it was salts, that was left by someone who worked for the Silvercops. And it was all signs pointing towards Glenn until, plot twist, their leader made a deal with the Silvercops so he could go live a posh life and no longer had to survive off the streets like some guy who rides bikes and plays a card game at the same time. They defeat him and decide to make their hideout available for all who feels the need to stop by if they're in any trouble. It's a good story. They had another plot twist at the end where Glenn decides to go off on his own for a mission, and in doing so, he gets a whole new body. He's now this big fluffy dog guy, and he's going to join the Silvercops as a recruit, assumingly to destroy them from the inside, and he's chosen a new name, Dodge Charger. How much cooler can this story get? Solar Opposites is probably one of the more insane things I watch. Each season that goes on, they keep introducing more and more side stories, so less time gets focused on the family. I think it'll be funny if by the time season 10 comes around, we only get like 1 or 2 episodes that focus on the family, and everything else is a different side story that keeps escalating and escalating, I guess. But with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you leave a like, comment, and a subscribe. What are your opinions on Solar Opposites Season 4? I know this video is coming out very late. I wasn't originally going to make this video, but I decided to now. So with that being said, I'll see each and every one of you around next time. Okay, goodbye.